let's talk a little bit about how you've spent these last several months, Jon, because these have been extraordinary in so many unanticipated ways. Talk about change that none of us would have predicted.
Yeah.
We're in the midst of multiple crises as a people, as a planet, as a country. And one of the things that you did was lead the mitigation retreat. You led this retreat for 13 weeks. And Monday through Friday, day in and day out, led a meditation and then took live questions from the 1,000 people who were live with you on Zoom. And you were accompanied by thousands and thousands more who were joining you live on YouTube or later on YouTube, some of whom are doing that now. And I'm curious for you, what I guess what I want to start with, Jon, is how have you changed through this 6 months? What was the impact on you of going through this process where at the beginning you certainly had no idea of what you were committing to? And yet I want to start and just ask you your sense of your own evolution, but then I want to come to the community and how you saw that evolve and the impact on others.
What touched me most about the retreat was that anybody showed up for it. There was a lot of talk in mid-March. I mean, when things started shutting down, all the universities shut down, the unemployment, I mean, the job loss was like millions every week, up to 40 million. And that was all like the last social event I had with real people was the last weekend in February.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had some visitors to our home right after that, family. And then everything shut down. And we could still be in relationship to the pod that was our family, that my grandchildren and my daughter who live nearby, right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, it was like hermetically sealed. We were supposed to flatten the curve, right? We were all supposed to actually engage as an act of compassion, not go out unless you were a frontline worker or an essential worker who was involved in, in some sense or other, feeding all of us, millions of people,
Mm-hmm.
feeding millions of people who are out of work and living paycheck to paycheck, and all the people who are dying from an illness that rapidly got on top of us instead of us being on top of it, for all sorts of reasons that start with dismantling the pandemic preparedness teams on the national level and defunding them, including the CDC. And so like but the expectation towards the middle of March, when Soren and I started talking about like what could we do.
Mm-hmm.
So the mitigation retreat started in the last week of March, and it started with an hour and a half talk that I gave. Excuse me. And I just felt like I wanted to just reach out to whoever was interested in dialoguing, although it's all like one way, in a certain way, at least while I'm talking, but to reach out to people and remind them that if we had to actually socially isolate, which was the phrase that was being used, lock ourselves up in our homes and figure out how to get food, but aside from that, like no contact, well, we know how to do that. Meditators know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have been spending decades going places where we do just that. We shut down. They
Mm-hmm.
feed us a couple of meals a day, and aside from that, all we're doing is sitting and walking, and almost all of it, 99% of it, in silence. So when you live inside that kind of container, and you could call it a pressure cooker to some degree or other, on heavy duty silent retreats, you learn stuff about being and being present that are akin to what we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
And while that might seem like idiotic or a total luxury for people when there's no pandemic and there's no order to stay at home, if 300 million people are basically told to stay at home, you could maybe use a little support in how to handle this in a way that actually makes you feel like you can do this. I can do this. I can engage, and it can be benefits, broadly speaking, to both myself and to the community, much larger, if we engage in this kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, it's not just sitting in silence. So it wasn't just leading guided meditations, which I did, as you said, every Monday through Friday for 13 straight weeks. But but it was also conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the gallery view because it allowed us to see, although there were so many pages, you couldn't scroll through the gallery and it often crashed the system.
Mm-hmm.
But that there were so many people that would show up in real time, first to listen to that talk with which on March 25th, I think it was, so Sora and I just like put it out there, and 2,400 people listened live
Wow.
from every time zone in the world. So once I did that, it was obvious like, well, you can't stop now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to actually drop. Instead of stop, drop
Mm-hmm.
in. So let's provide a kind of container for at least 1 hour a day, and 2 days a week. It'll be 2 hours a day
Mm-hmm.
because we'll have small groups so people can support each other and have conversation where we actually practice together in whatever ways we can do in a limited fashion online. So it's not like we're all in the same room, but on a retreat, I mean, the largest retreats I've led are for 300 or 400 people, and usually they're more for like 200 people
Mm-hmm.
in a room, in a place, if anybody even remembers that we used to do that kind of thing. But now we're in this room called Zoom, and the number of people who can participate and really tune into what is being pointed to through the words and through our gestures and connections is limitless.
Mm-hmm.
So that I see as a kind of love affair with our potential as a species to grow into awareness, which is the fundamental meaning of the Latin name Linnaeus gave us, Homo sapiens sapiens, a species that is aware and is aware that it's aware. So that's what's called technically awareness and meta-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that we don't learn in school until recently. Now it's being taught in schools more and more. So it felt like, let's do this and let's have conversation, dialogue, inquiry about what we're really doing. So it's not just some kind of mechanical breathe in, breathe out, relax, let go, blah, 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 sort of ways in which this kind of stuff can turn to, you know what I mean, in your mouth if because it is so easily trivialized when actually it's the most important thing for us humans in the world. Oh, breath, I'm not, even if you do it at the level of the breath, I'm not that interested in the breath. Oh, yeah? You're only one breath away from being dead at any given moment. So if you can't take this breath in, it doesn't take more than a fraction of a second for that, no matter what's going on in your mind, no matter what's going on with your work, no matter what's going on with the pandemic, all of that exits within a fraction of a second when you can't take the next in breath. And the only thing that's important to you is this new getting this in breath. So
Mm-hmm.
why do we trivialize it so much? Even at that level, but there's so many other levels at which when we find an object of attention and we ride on the waves, say, of the breathing, it's not about the breathing, it's about the attending. And so we dialogue around it in the questions and answers because it's so beautiful. The people bring what's on their minds into the question, and then I have an opportunity to, at least like a mirror perhaps, reflect back how that could be held slightly differently if you embraced it in awareness, kind of as a love affair, rather than reject it if you don't like it, or be seduced by it if it's a kind of something that you really floats your boat.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's how it arose. And just to say, the dialogue was extremely rich from my point of view. The comments, it wasn't just questions and answers. It's like inquiry together. What is this all about? And people bring their stress, their pain, their illness, their anguish. It was during the time of, sort of all this social upheaval, racial violence in the streets. And all of this became part of the curriculum. And we got a chance to talk about it in ways that actually emphasize that mindfulness is not about just some nice thing to quiet your mind, but if you are awake, you have to be awake to human injustice. You have to be awake to not just personal human injustice, but institutionalized racism, institutionalized injustice. And that means, oh, I didn't realize the mind has to be that big. Well, it already is, but the question is, how do you hold it without going crazy? And that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of the Q&A.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not like a fountain of wisdom, so it's more like we're dialoguing and inquiring together about, well, how could we use the meditation practice to hold this in ways that might provide some kind of clarity, some kind of solace, some kind of enduring affirmation of beauty.